and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver.
Awesome game 7.
Checker flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell Media Station.
Where you have a voice.
We're one play away from an injury.
He knows this. He's a study of the game.
And we have strong opinions.
He's been awful. I don't think they were trying, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
This is Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman and Caroline Fenton. Presented by TriStar Moving on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. We are live from the Hillside Medical Games Studios, and you can watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every day. Our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry, Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan, in for Jared Stillman today. And before we get rolling, if you're just getting in your cars or if you're just tuning in, Elijah Campbell just wrapped up his last day as the producer of Darren, Donick, and Chase. He is leaving us to move on to bigger and better things. And I've said it so many times, but anything Elijah touches is better. So congratulations, Elijah, on your new adventure. We will very, very much so miss you here. But I know that he will not be a stranger. And I told Elijah I need my Presbyterian basketball takes. St. John's basketball, Presbyterian basketball, you know, the blue bloods of college basketball in the eyes of Elijah Campbell. So we will miss him very much, but congratulations to Elijah Campbell for moving on. We've got some big-time news. Kevin Durant has requested a trade from the Brooklyn Nets. There's some NBA tea there. Also, USC and UCLA potentially joining the Big Ten, which makes close to no sense geographically whatsoever. But we'll talk to Jason Fitz later on in the show about his thoughts on that. But first, the biggest story in Nashville, or at least for Predators fans, is the Philip Forsberg contract negotiations. And Adam, this is something that you and I discussed at length yesterday, is if Forsberg wants to stay here, if the Predators want Forsberg to stay, which I think are two things that are more than likely, if not 100% confirmed, then why haven't there been negotiations? Why haven't they closed? Why has Penn not hit paper? Why is Forsberg not signed to the Nashville Predators yet? Because time is ticking, and we are now less than 2 weeks away from when that contract needs to be signed. So what exactly is holding up negotiations? Now, earlier this week, we heard from Frank Saravalli, who said that Forsberg was asking in the low 8s, which, you know, brought up a question mark in my mind, as that sounds pretty low for something for Forsberg's camp to at least be asking for. So I thought perhaps that's trade protection is looped into that deal. The next day, Jared reported that that's actually not the case, whether things had changed, whether Philip Forsberg's agent, J.P. Barry, was feeding Frank Saravalli false information. We don't know. But what Jared reported was that it was not in the low 8s and that trade protection negotiation was not in the cards. So that begged the question, what the heck is holding up signing the deal? What's going on there other than money? Now, Elliot Friedman was on the midday show today and cleared up exactly what the terms are of the contract, where both sides are at in terms of the contract negotiations with Philip Forsberg. And again, that is Elliot Friedman on the midday show today.
This is the time of the year where I attempt to earn my salary, and other people can judge whether I do or don't. But, you know, I've called around, I've made calls, and I asked people, like, what do you think? That's one of the ways I was able to just slightly be ahead of the Fiala move yesterday, because people were telling me, like, be on it, be on it, be on it. And it was Kings. And, you know, I just asked around. I say, you know, what do you guys think of the big free agents? Forsberg is obviously one of them. And, you know, I just say, what do you guys think? And I think, like, there are some negotiations, you know, there's a deadline now. And so it's time to get serious. And you can tell in a lot of cases, not every case, but in a lot of cases, when there's been movement towards something or you're still nowhere. And the general feel around the league is that there's been movement. Like, I heard David Poyle say, we're talking long-term for Forsberg. That's what we want. I don't think that's a problem. I think 8 years, I think everybody kind of gets that that's probably where it's going to go here. I think everybody's known for a while now where the number was going to have to be for Nashville's comfort and for Forsberg's comfort. And, you know, I maybe 8.5 is a little bit on the low end, but, you know, I just asked some people for their guesses, and that's kind of where they think it's around. Now, it might not be exactly right, but some of these teams seem to feel that there has been some momentum. And I think when you get that close, you assume it's going to happen. They could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I'm under the assumption right now from the people I'm talking to who are more connected than I am that they think there's a path to a contract.
I just muted myself, sorry, like Joe Rexrode. Okay, so a lot to unpack there. So first and foremost, Elliot Friedman says it's time to get serious. Well, I feel like it's been time to get serious for quite some time now. And Elliot Friedman says that there's been movement within contract negotiations, because that was another one of my questions is, has this just been at a stalemate for the past couple of weeks? Have both sides kind of been staring each other down like a chess piece, just waiting for the next person to bend or break? And the Elliot Friedman saying that long-term is not a problem, that both sides are pretty much on board with 8 years. And in my opinion, that's never even been a question. I kind of thought that both sides were on board for 8 years. That's what Philip Forsberg wanted, was a long-term contract in Nashville. And I thought that from the beginning, David Poile was completely on board with a long-term contract. Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong in thinking that.
No, it was always going to be a max-term contract, with Philip Forsberg being at his age, in his late 20s. This was his one opportunity to cash in. And there have been players who have signed shorter contracts, I think namely Austin Matthews, who a few years ago signed a 5-year contract, which takes him up to his mid to late 20s. But that's because he's younger. I don't remember how old he was when he signed that contract. He had to have been in his early 20s. Forsberg did not, Forsberg's not in the same position. This was his one real opportunity to get that max term contract with a large annual salary. So 8 years was never the issue. When David Poile said that to reporters, I guess that was last week, it did not come as a surprise to anybody. I mean, it was always going to be 8 years. I never once thought that it was going to be anything but
right.
8 years.
Like you said, this is the big opportunity for the big contract. This is Forsberg. I mean, I don't want to say his last opportunity, but this is the opportunity for the big contract.
Yes.
But the big kicker here, per Elliot Friedman, who's on the Midday Show today, said 8.5 is what he and a lot of other people around the league are expecting the deal to be. Now, he says that's on the low end. I would say that's right on the money of what I think is fair for the Predator side of things and also fair on the Forsberg side of things. I think anything north of 9 is grossly overpaying Philip Forsberg. But again, Elliot Friedman saying 8.5 is the number that both sides, what he thinks that both sides are going to agree to. And I personally think if that's the number, and as Jared reported on Tuesday, trade protection is not the problem. I think that's a fair deal on both sides. And if it is 8.5, I don't know what Philip Forsberg is prioritizing. But I have to think that if contract negotiations are still going on, because I heard Willie on the Midday Show today saying, these guys want to win. I don't know if that's Philip Forsberg's number one priority. I don't know if his number one priority is staying in Nashville. I don't know if his number one priority is money. But I would say if negotiations are still going on, he wants to be in Nashville. So I could see 8.5, and then whatever trade protection is on or off the table, that could be the final contract. And if that's the number in mind on both sides, I wouldn't be surprised if a deal gets done in the next couple of days.
Well, yesterday we talked at length about where we thought his value was based on other forwards in the league that make upwards of $9 million per season, those that make between $8 and $9 million per season. We all agreed that between 8 and 9 made more sense than between 9 and above.
Right.
And when we looked at players who recently signed with similar levels of production in their careers as Philip at this point, I think we hammered down somewhere between $8.5 and $9 million being fair value for Philip Forsberg. So according to Elliot's reporting, if it ends up being 8.5, and it could be 8.75, 8.6, I don't know, but we'll go with the nice round number right now, and we'll say 8.5. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. That would make him one of the top 25 highest paid forwards in the NHL next season based on cap hit. There are 3 forwards in the NHL who make $8.5 million: Leon Draisaitl, Mika Zibanejad, and Steven Stamkos. Now, I would put all 3 of those players clearly ahead of Philip Forsberg in terms of who is the best of that group. But
and that's what I want to get into coming up next, is kind of comparing Forsberg to the rest of the market that makes around that amount of money. And also your thoughts. 615-737-1025 is 8.5. If that's the number, are you good with that? Do you think that's a fair deal? And do you think that Forsberg and the Preds should sign the dotted line at that number? We'll get into that coming up next. Plus, what exactly is Philip Forsberg's priority when signing this contract? We'll get into that coming up next. Stillman and Company, Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
The college football season never stops. ESPN college football analyst Trevor Manich joins Stillman and Company every Tuesday at 4:30.
They've got to do what Nick Saban in Alabama has done so successfully over the last 10 years.
Presented by Houston Clinic on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Smokeville Smoke Shop has been serving Hendersonville and Metro Nashville since 2015 and is committed to providing high quality, hands-on, and personable customer service. Stop in the Smokeville Smoke Shops in Hendersonville, Gallatin, Hermitage, and Goodlettsville to try any of their wide selection of locally sourced products and selection of top nationwide brands including vapes, hookah, hand-blown glass,